Hello, dancers, dance teachers, and lovers of all things dance. Miss Shauna back for another fun and exciting day chatting about dance. And today we're going to have a little bit of a discussion about tricks versus progressions or foundations. Okay, so hands up, teachers, if you've had your students come in and have like their hearts and minds set on having like the coolest thing they just saw on TikTok or Instagram, and they need to have it in their dances. And also, hands up if you're a dancer watching this, hands up if you found yourself trapped in that where you see something online and you're like, I gotta have that in my dance. Like that will make or break my dance. If you are an elite dancer, you see something, you're like, that is going to score me higher. It's going to give me an overall. It's going to get me a judge's choice. Hands up if you found yourself trapped in that. Because I, as a teacher, have had that happen so many times where a dancer is like, I have to have this in my dance. And I do a lot of jazz. So I teach a lot of jazz and I teach a lot of jazz. I teach acro as well. Teach lyrical, teach a bunch of stuff, but I teach a lot of jazz. And I find that this happens, and maybe it's trendy, but I find that a lot of times I've got younger ones who are coming in and saying, I saw blank on this reel or on this TikTok, and I have to have it. That's going to be what scores me an overall like placing. And I kind of see, I get them to show me because maybe it's something cool. Maybe I want to put it in the dance. And I see what it is. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. But it's not going to make or break the dance. Also, before that goes in, you have to have this and 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 this. And suddenly there's like a list of like 8 to 10 things. It's like, that's your progression to get that. And what I'm finding, and maybe this is just a me thing, or maybe we've all found this a little bit, but what I'm finding is there seems to be this trend of tricks versus foundations. And I find this when I talk to my dancers, when they're saying they want certain things in their dances, and it's very trick heavy. And we're going to kind of break down what I mean by tricks. Like, it's very trick heavy. And I also find it when I'm judging that people are tossing in tricks because they think they have to, where as I'm judging, I'm going to give you the feedback on the trick to make it, more technically sound or safer or anything like that. But in my mind, I'm going, you didn't need that. In fact, I took more marks off for you having it because it wasn't executed properly or safely. And so, take it out, right? And I'm never going to tell you to take it out. That's totally your freedom and liberty as a performer with a choreographer to put it in. But as an adjudicator, it is my job to see if it's done right, if it's technically sound. And for me, big for me is safety. So making sure everything's done safely. But I do find that tricks are becoming a thing. And I find, like, coming from a gymnastics background, we used to like toss tricks, right? Just for fun. They were things you were working on. They never made it into your routine, but you would have a day where you got to kind of like play. If you've ever been in gymnastics, there's like pits or like tumble tracks or different things like that. And you just kind of got to play, and they never were in your final routine, but it was like you got to toss things for fun, right? Just to play with it. And I feel like there's more and more trick tossing versus foundations. And I think that falls into lacking of progressions, because I also do think that there is a time and a place for some of these tricks. So what do I mean by tricks? When I say trick, a lot of times, like when I'm scrolling, when I'm caught in that scroll hole on the internet, we all get there. When I'm caught on that scroll hole on the internet, I see tricks kind of being defined as like acrobatic elements or acro-based elements, right? Feet over hands, vertical type stuff. And I don't think it's just that, right? Yes, absolutely. There has been a big like wave of acro entering into the dance world. But I also think tricks exist in, I guess, highly technical skills, right? So, you've got all these different turn variations that you can put in. Now, is a double pirouette right away into an illusion going to be better than just a basic double pirouette? Only if it's done better, right? Only if it's executed better. Or if you're doing fouettes or versus changing spot fouettes, does it really make a difference? I mean, the changing spot looks cool and everybody's like, I want to do those things. And a lot of times, and this is like out of all love and respect for my dancers, but a lot of times they come in and they don't even know what the move is called. And that's when I know they've seen something that's maybe trendy that they would like to replicate versus actually saying, hey, there's a move I really want to get. And here's the move, right? But they go, oh, I want to do those ones where you change where you're looking, right? And they go around and around and around. And even I had a group this year when we did some goal setting. They said, we want in our dance like a cool turn sequence. And I said, okay, well, what does that look like? What are your turns that you're putting in there? And they were like, well, I don't know, but you always see it online, like those cool turning sequences. And I was like, well, let's look and see what turns we can get and how we can combine them to make a cool turn sequence, because they actually weren't married to a certain turn. They just wanted a sequence in their dance, a few counts of 8 that were just turns looking sharp and intricate and fun and eye-catching. And so then I'm going, well, then we can take our stuff that we're technically proficient in, technically sound in, and it's not like I always go back to the leg flick turn, right? It's not necessarily that, right? But I find that tricks are those things that are sometimes more advanced, right? Now, here's where I struggle with this as a dance teacher, as a dance judge, as someone who just loves the art of dance, is that I want to make sure, first of all, I want to make sure that everything that's being executed on that stage is being done safely, at an age appropriate level, at an ability appropriate level, so that you're preventing any risk of injury, that you are ensuring just safe delivery or execution of the move. Safety is always my priority, right? And when I'm judging and I'm watching, I find myself leaning often when I am giving trick corrections. I do find that they tend to fall into the safety category, right? So I found myself judging last year. There was a lot of acro in lyrical, beautiful, beautiful dances. And the amount of times that I found myself saying, like, just watch your landings, right? Because these landings were landing very heel heavy. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, your poor body, you're so young doing these really hard landings. And if you just can adjust how you land, if you just soften that landing, properly absorb the landing from this flight element, then you're going to have a way longer life in dance. You're not going to have the burden of excess injuries. And really, it's probably going to just feel better when you're doing your dance, right? But I found myself giving feedback on how to land safely or how to ensure your body was in the proper alignment, because I'm going, wow, that's putting pressure on your spine. And if you just use your shoulders more, it's going to reduce back injuries, right? So I find, first of all, there's that safety aspect of things. Now, I also find when you add tricks into the mix, you're kind of, I don't want to say taking away from the art, but what I do find, because I think the tricks can be very artistic, but what I do find when I see audiences or even my own students going, that was cool, right? There's the wow factor versus the artistic factor. And the wow factor is short lived, whereas the artistic factor is way more impactful. So if you can incorporate cool tricks and still have that artistic factor that like is so synonymous with something like a performing art like dance, that brings beauty and that can really elevate a dance. But if all you're doing is putting a skill or a trick, I'm going to call them tricks today, putting a trick into a dance for a wow factor, or if you are an elite dancer, competitive dancer, or competitive choreographer, if you're putting that trick in, hoping it's going to score you higher, I mean, sometimes that trick doesn't. If all you're doing is putting it in to make a person go, wow, that was cool. I mean, it's a 50-50, right? It's a 50-50 chance that that's going to have the proper impact. I have seen and been near and been around and experienced where adjudicators, and I'm not harping on acro. We all know that I come from a gymnastics background. I love me a good back handspring, but I want the back handspring done perfectly. So if I am on your adjudication panel and you're doing a back handspring with closed shoulders, with flexed feet, with bent legs, with bent elbows, with a hard landing, I don't care about that back handspring. It did not wow me. I'm going, wow, that you almost kissed the floor. That's really painful. That maybe should practice a little bit more. Let's take it out until it's better. I would have been happy with a back walkover or no element like that at all, right? But I have also been there when you've got an adjudicator, a dance judge, or even an audience member who doesn't know anything about acro and just sees a kid flip and they're like, oh my God, that's so cool. That's so cool. Did you see that? She flipped. Not knowing it was unsafe, not knowing it wasn't properly executed, not knowing the risks to like the long-term risks to the body for doing the skill improperly, all of those things. So that's when I talk about the wow factor, right? People are like, that was cool. There's more to it than just being cool, right? So why am I talking about this today? Great question, right? Why am I talking about this today? I guess one, I'd like to ask the question of why is dance sometimes, and I'm not saying it's always, because I've seen some beautiful dances. I've done judging, I've done video review of dances that had like no tricks. They were not trick heavy at all, or let's not say that. They were technically sound and they were technically advanced. But if you watched the dance not knowing dance background stuff, like if you were a parent or someone who bought a ticket to watch a show and you watched, this dance, you'd be like, oh, that wasn't that hard. Meanwhile, it's like the most difficult things you've ever seen, right? So very technically sound, but nothing trick heavy, right? And these dances are phenomenal. They are awe-inspiring. They have me at the edge of my seat where I'm like, oh my God, that was amazing, right? It doesn't need to be trick heavy, but there does seem to be this influx of belief systems, I guess, maybe, that feel a dance needs to be trick heavy. So my question, I'm putting it out there to all of us in the dance world. Why? Why do we feel the need for our dances to be trick heavy? And I guess part B to that question, in creating those dances, are we willing to sacrifice the well-being of our dancers to get there? Because if they are trick heavy, like I had said, if they are trick heavy and done properly and tied into the artistry, excellent. What I'm talking about today is when they're trick heavy, but there's maybe not the proper progression or foundation behind those tricks, and we just tossed them in to toss those tricks. Are we okay as dance educators to put these tricks in at the sacrifice of the well-being of our dancers? I personally am not, right? And sometimes I have to have these arguments, and they're not mean arguments, right? They are discussions with my dancers to say, hey, listen, I get that you want X trick in your dance, but I am not willing to sacrifice your body, your well-being, and a lot of times it is with competitive kids, and your competition score to put this trick in. Let's work on it. Let's have a spot in our dance that it's going to go when we get it. But for now, let's be smart. Let's be safe. Let's respect our bodies. Let's respect the art. And when it is ready, we're going to put it in, right? That's going to be like the cherry on top. That doesn't mean it has to be in there perfectly right at the start. We have a spot reserved for it if we get it. And listen, if it doesn't come this year, it's next year or the year after, right? So I am curious if anyone has the answer to those two questions. Why is it so trick heavy? Why does there seem to be this belief that it has to be trick heavy? Like if your jazz dance doesn't have those 3 acro elements, because you're allowed like 3 flight elements or acro based elements, hands over feet elements, depending on the competition rules, how they're written. Why do we feel like we have to then have those 3? Like, God forbid we don't have those 3 acro based elements, right? Because I can tell you this much, as a dance judge, I'm not looking for how many acro moves you have in your dance. I don't care. I want to make sure if you're doing jazz, I'm looking for jazz, right? And your jazz foundations, right? But why is there that belief? And B, at what cost, right? So I feel like I've kind of harped a little bit on tricks, and I feel like I've kind of put down acro a little bit. And I'm going to again state that I come from a gymnastics background. I do not hate acro. I love acro. I think there is a place for it. I think when it's done right and when it's put into a dance artistically, it can be so beautiful. So I'm sorry if you feel like I attacked acro. If you're an acro-based dancer, I'm not coming for you. Just make sure you're doing it safely and properly. That is all. But I do think that there is a place for tricks, right? And that's, I guess, where we're going to kind of go next in this little chat today is how do we put it together, right? If we as choreographers want certain tricks in our dances, or if our dancers have their hearts set on certain tricks, how can we put it together? And it's always and forever going to come back down to those foundations and those progressions. So sorry, my acro friends, I know I keep doing this, but if you want a side aerial in your jazz dance and you can't do a cartwheel, that is your foundation. If you can't do that proper cartwheel, how are you going to get a proper side aerial, right? And if you can't do a proper hurdle, like there's so many things that go into it. So it is those foundations. So because it is still the start of the year, that's why I wanted to chat about this. It's still the start of the year. So we are still, maybe, I don't know, some studios dive right into choreo. I saw a really cool, I wish I knew who posted it. I was caught in the scroll hole. Oh. So if I'm talking about you, please let me know that you're the person who posted this on Instagram. It was on Instagram and it was saying, I think it was more geared towards like parents. If your dancer is spending more time rehearsing versus training, like that's a problem. And I agreed. So what does that mean? Training is those foundations, the skill progression, the learning, right? The alignment, the technique, all of those things. That is your training. Rehearsing is just learning the choreo, perfecting it, getting ready to put it on stage. It's repetition, right? It's over and over repetition. So if you as a dancer are spending more time rehearsing versus training, like you're doing yourself a bit of a disservice. And I mean, we can probably debate that and discuss that. That is my personal opinion. When I saw that post, I was like, right? But we do want to make sure we're putting in the right amount of time training. And the start of the year is so good for that. I mean, listen, we're just in October, right? A lot of dance just started, right? We've only been a few weeks in. And so we're still on progression and laying those foundations and building. So instead of just diving in and thinking of tossing tricks, take time in those lesson plans. And if you didn't see kind of the earlier videos where I talk about planning, take time in those lesson plans to really say, okay, I want this trick that my dancers have pointed out, and my dancers really want it. So what foundations do I have to lay now so that when they perform at their first competition, at recital, at this community performance, wherever it is, whenever it is down the road, when they perform, they can do it safely and properly. And then lay those foundations and carry your dancers through those progressions. Teach them, right? Because if you're a dancer, and maybe I'm coming down hard today, I don't know. If this sounds hard, I'm sorry, kind of. But I feel like it is kind of a hard topic because as a dance educator, I care so much about my dancers and their longevity in what they do. So as a teacher, if I care more about going, well, my dancer can do cool tricks. Look at the cool things my dancer has in their dance. But it's not landing properly, or when they're executing it, their alignment is off and I can see like an injury waiting to happen. That doesn't make me a good dance teacher. It makes me a poor dance teacher, right? Because as a teacher and a choreographer, I do have to keep the well-being of my dancers close to my heart, right? That has to be so important to what we do because dance is hard. And these tricks are hard. They're difficult and challenging, and they take a lot of body awareness, muscular strength, agility, flexibility, like all of the things, right? And dancers train for years to learn these things, right? So we want to make sure as educators, as dance educators, that we are helping our dancers develop properly and safely so that, yeah, down the road, they can do those cool tricks. They can do the leg flick and the thing with no hands and where they turn their heads and the cool turn sequence and all the things that they come in and they talk to you about. And you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Go get your phone and show me what you saw on TikTok because I'm so confused, right? We can bring all of those things together. And this will help you, again, go back to what you're planning to teach in those classes, right? If you have a trick, you got to lay those foundations. You have a trick you want to use, you got to lay those foundations. It's also going to be so valuable in helping your dancers learn the importance of proper technique and progression. And not just because you're supposed to have proper technique in dance. Because a lot of times, like, kids are like, well, you're supposed to have good technique. I'm like, but what does that mean and why? Why are we supposed to have good technique? Right? It's our job as educators to let them know that it is for safety. It is for injury prevention. It is so that you can then move on to the more difficult skill. If you can't do a double pirouette, you're not going to be doing fouettes. If you can't do a jeté, you're not going to be doing, any other splitting leap, right? Like, if you can't do a jeté, how are you going to do a pop jeté? If you can't do a jeté, how are you going to do a switch leap? How are you going to do any kind of a baryshnikov? Anything. If you can't get the foundational leaps, how are you going to do the difficult ones? Right? And it's not to tear down your dancers and say you can't do it, you're not ready. Absolutely not. I'm going to get you there. I'm going to get you ready, right? These things are part of your journey, part of your path. They're on the map. It's like a treasure hunt, right? If we want to do this, if this is our pot of gold over here, here's our treasure map and here's all the things we have to find along the way. I have do you ever have those like phone games? I don't really play a lot of phone games. I'm boring like that, I guess. But there's one that I used to play, and there was little I don't know if it to earn coins. I don't know, to earn coins. Can you tell I don't play a lot of video games? It's so embarrassing. But you would have to do these little treasure hunts or whatever, and you try to get all over the map, and you'd have to find I don't know, nails to build a bridge and coins to put in a thing, whatever. It's the same thing, right? It is that same treasure map. You're on a journey and learning the jeté and then learning how to swing your leg for a switch leap, learning how to push, learning all of those things come together. It's not just one day you go, I'm going to do switch leap, because also if that jeté has a sickled foot in the air, a turned in front leg or a turned in back leg, a bent back leg, maybe you're going to try to toss a switch leap out of that, but it's going to be a hot mess. The landing is going to be difficult. In the air, the body is not going to be in the right position. It's risky, right? We don't want any of that. We want the longevity and safety and well-being of our dancers, and we want them to understand that, right? And I think that if we can do it all properly, we can find a place where it all comes together, right? So I am not against tricks or those intricacies in the dance. I'm not against acro elements in jazz. I am not against turning spot, fouettes, a big turn sequence in your jazz or lyrical piece. I'm not against any of that. What I'm against is doing it when it's not ready, right? What I'm against is allowing your dancers to put out something that may be risky, dangerous, a detriment to them, right? Our goal is to always put our best selves out there and to ensure that in doing so, we're bringing out the best in our dancers, which includes safety, right? Which includes proper progressions, proper foundations. And I am all for doing all of that at an age appropriate level, at a pace that works for your dancers without sacrificing the art of dance. And to ensure that when all of that is met, you are embracing the longevity of your dancers in the process, right? There is this thought process that I have been working really hard to change in my studio, is that once you finish high school, you can't dance anymore. You're done. And I've had dancers who in the past have said, well, don't you just stop dancing? You can't dance past high school. And I was like, what are you talking? Who told you that? Who gave you that fallacy to believe in, right? You absolutely can dance past high school. I have 20, 21-year-old dancers who are still doing it. I have working on adult programs. You can keep dancing. And if you, when you're a young dancer, learn how to dance safely and properly and really find grace and love and respect for your body in the process, you can dance your whole life. Lord knows I'm 42. And I mean, not to brag a little bit. This is a little bit of a brag. I'm 42 and I can still do a switch leap. I can still do a baryshnikov. I can still do fouettes. And I am so proud of the fact that I do that and I don't feel like my body is broken after either, right? I feel like I'm in a great physical space, right? And I respected my body as I got older. I didn't always respect it when I was younger, but I learned how to respect it as I got older, which is really, really special. So tricks, are they bad? No, unless they're at the sacrifice of foundations and proper progressions. So dancers, teachers, parents, when you sit there and think, this is what's going to make my dance, this one thing, remember that one trick doesn't make a dance, right? It is not about being tricky. It's about being talented and showing your wide array of talents. That trick that you're so hyper focused on is one aspect of what you're doing as a dancer, as a performer, as a choreographer. So allow your talents to shine through, right? Allow yourself to evolve and grow as a dancer properly and safely. And if tricks come out of that, so cool. Awesome. I can't wait to see them as a teacher. I can't wait for my dancers to do them as an adjudicator. I cannot wait to see all the dancers across the country doing cool things that are done right, that are done to fit the art, that are done age appropriately and safely. And then from there, we can really grow our dance community. All right. I know some of that seemed like I was coming down hard on tricks and people who want to do tricks or adding tricks into our dances. And that was not the intention. What I do want to do though is raise awareness on doing them properly, safely, and ensuring that in the process, we're keeping the longevity of our dancers like top of mind. So if you have thoughts on this, and I feel like there are deep thoughts on this topic, feel like there are deep thoughts on this topic, for, against, neutral, whatever, deep thoughts. So if you have any, pop them in the comments, share your thoughts. Discussion is great, right? Like I said, I'm not against the tricks. I just want them done right and safely. But some people might just want the tricks. Some people might want them gone. I would love to hear all of them, but let's keep it respectful. Let's keep it conducive to growth, right? We want to always keep growing and evolving our art, and discussion and pushing those limits is the way to do it. So thank you for tuning in today. That is all I've got for you. That is all I have. It's my magical rant on foundations and progressions versus tricks. So share your thoughts if you want to. And until next time, keep on dancing, keep on shining, and I'll see you soon.